Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Scott, and today we are taking a look at the new Chariot kit that just released for the City-States army in Conquest: The Last Argument of Kings. Bellum was kind enough to send me this awesome kit, so let's go ahead and take a look at it. Taking a look at the sprues, we can see that this kit comes on two sprues, one that contains the chariot and the lions, and the other that contains the weapon that you can build on the back of the chariot. There are two different weapon options, each coming with its own stat line, and when you look at these pieces, you might initially think these are a little less detailed than past models from Conquest, and that is somewhat true. There are a lot more smooth surfaces on this chariot, so at a glance, it'll look less detailed, but there's still plenty of detail to make painting this a fun time. The pieces are all clearly numbered, so assembling this model shouldn't be too complicated. There are letters on the insides of the body parts for the lions. That way, once you cut them out, you still can keep track of which body parts go to which lion. The instructions for this kit are straightforward and easy to follow. On one side you have the instructions for one variant of the chariot, and the other side builds the other variant. It took me about an hour and a half to build this kit, which is a little bit longer than I expected. One thing that I discovered as I was building the model is that there aren't very many registration marks on the pieces to help you know that you've got them glued in the right spot. As a result, I had to spend a little bit more time experimenting with where the pieces should go and what looked right, and I also had to hold the pieces in place while the glue dried just a little bit longer, so that slowed me down a little bit, but other than that, the kit went together pretty well. When you go to paint this kit, I recommend basing it and maybe even painting it before you glue all the components together. I left mine in sub-assemblies. The bar that connects the lions to the chariot doesn't really have a set way that it has to connect. The intent here is that you're able to then customize the chariot's position so it looks like it's turning or going over terrain, which is a cool feature, but it does mean that you're going to want to leave those separate until you at the very least get your base plate all figured out. I'm personally not going to glue mine down to the base until after I've painted it so I can access the details on the bottom of the chariot and the underside of the lions. I'm not a huge fan of the way the base plate is done for this model. The base plate is just two cavalry bases that you'll glue together when you build the model. I really think Bellum should have just made a new type of base plate for their chariot, but luckily the community has already gotten busy making 3D printable bases that you can use for the chariot. You can either get a stand that goes underneath the two base plates and holds them together, or you can just print a full rectangular base to put your chariots on. The link for those 3D print files is in the description of this video. You might be wondering just how large this model is, so here it is next to some other models from the City-States Army. As you can see, it's not really a tall or bulky model, it's just long, and that's why it has two base plates. It's shorter than the companion cavalry, but it is taller than an infantry stand. Taking a look at the rules for the chariot, we can see that there are two versions of this unit. The Bellum, which has a sort of flamethrower-like weapon on the back, and the Scorpios, which has a ballista on the back. Now, both units have the same base stat line. They both march 7 inches, have a volley of 2, a clash of 2, 6 attacks, 10 wounds, resolve and defense of 3, and no evade. Now, where they differ is in the special rules that are connected to their weapons. The Bellum has less shots and a shorter range, but those shots get torrential fire, which means that every 2 shots that successfully hit generate another hit. Bellum also has condensed propellant, which means that its max range is always considered to be its effective range, which means it's actually getting 8 shots instead of 7. The Scorpios instead has 8 shots with a longer range, and those shots have rapid volley, which means that ones, I believe it is, on the hit roll generate additional hits. And instead of having the condensed propellant, it has an exploit flanks rule, where it gets bonuses when it hits an enemy in their side or back flank. Gameplay wise, these are going to be very useful for the army. They're right at that 130 points threshold, which is one of the cheapest units in the army. So these are going to be great filler units in your list building, and they're going to be quite useful. They are going to be good at flanking and maneuvering and giving you a lot of board control without having to spend a ton of points on really large regiments. What makes the chariots really cool is that you can take 3 of them and have it only consume 1 unit slot in your list building, which means it's really easy to get a whole bunch of these in your army. And then once the game starts, each individual chariot gets its own card in your command stack and functions individually. That means you could take a rather elite list and then pack 3 or 4 chariots in and bring your command stack card count up to about the same threshold as a more horde-like army. It also means you'll have a lot of flexibility when it comes to activating these units, as you'll have 3 or 4 of the same card in your command stack. Now the big question is, do you need a chariot in your collection? If you're a city-states player, then you absolutely want to have at least one of these. They're really good filler for your lists, and they're honestly worth taking over a minimum size squad of hoplites. Ideally, you might have 2, 3, maybe even 4 of these. I built a list the other day that had 8 chariots in it, and I think that's about the max that I'd be able to fit in and still have other stuff in the army. You could do more, but then you're giving up the other options that are available to the army. I think from a painting perspective, this model is going to be a ton of fun to work with. I'm going to experiment with some marble effects on the chariot, kind of do it similar to the box art with a few little changes. So if you just want this model to paint it, then you'll absolutely have a ton of fun with it. And that pretty much wraps up our review of the City-States Chariot. Thank you so much for watching this video today. I really hope that you've enjoyed it and that it's been helpful to you. Be sure to like the video and then subscribe to the channel so you see future videos I make. I'd like to give a special shout out to my channel members that make videos like this possible. If you would like to become a channel member, hit the join button below this video. As always, have an amazing day and we'll catch you in the next one.